Okay, let's talk about something we hear all the time. Words like ADHD, depression, anxiety, they're everywhere. But, there's so much confusion around what they actually mean. So, in this explainer, we're going to cut right through all that noise and get to the heart of what these common conditions really are.
You've probably asked yourself this, right? Where's the line between just feeling down and having depression? Or when does everyday worry cross over into something more, like an anxiety disorder? That is exactly what we're here to figure out. We're going to break down the key signs of each condition so you can really see the difference.
All right, let's dive in. Before we can really get into the specifics of any condition, we have to start with a solid foundation. So, what are we even talking about when we say mental health? At its core, it's really that simple. It's all about our psychological and emotional well-being. And here's probably the most important way to think about it. Your mental health is just like your physical health. We all have it. And just like our bodies can get sick with a cold or a broken bone, our minds can face challenges too. And this brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most crucial point we're going to make. These are real, genuine medical conditions. They have roots in biology and psychology. They are not, I repeat, not a sign of weakness or some kind of character flaw. Getting this right from the start changes everything. So with that foundation set, let's jump into our first specific condition. We'll start with one you've definitely heard of, one that often starts in childhood, but believe me, affects a lot of adults too. Attention deficit/slash hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. See that word right there, neurodevelopmental? That is so key. It tells us that ADHD is related to how the brain itself grows and is wired. This isn't just about someone choosing not to pay attention. It's about brain function. And it's not something people just grow out of when they become adults. So what does ADHD actually look like in day-to-day life? Well, it usually breaks down into these three core features. First, difficulty paying attention. And we're not talking about just getting bored. This is about being easily sidetracked, disorganized. Then there's hyperactivity, that feeling of being constantly on the go, restless, fidgety. And finally, impulsivity, which means acting on a whim, often without thinking about what might happen next. Let's paint a picture of how this can all show up in one person. Imagine a student, right? The fact that they can't finish their homework, that's the difficulty with attention. They keep losing their books, that points to the disorganization. And blurting out answers before the teacher even finishes the question, that's a perfect example of impulsivity in action. Okay, let's switch gears. We're going to talk about two incredibly common conditions that get mistaken for each other all the time: depression and anxiety. Looking at them side by side should make the differences crystal clear. First up is depression. Now, the magic word here, the one you really need to remember, is persistent. This isn't about having a bad day or even a bad week. We are talking about a heavy, low mood or just a total loss of interest in things you once loved that just sticks around for weeks, sometimes months on end. And depression doesn't just live in your head. It affects your entire body. We're talking about bone-deep fatigue, sleep that's either too much or not enough, major changes in appetite, and on top of it all, these profound, heavy feelings of worthlessness. It's a whole system condition. Think about how that plays out in someone's life. Maybe they used to love hanging out with friends, but now they dodge every call and text. They're just exhausted, constantly. And they start to feel this deep, hollow sense that life has lost its meaning. It really does drain the color out of everything. Now let's look at its cousin, anxiety. Look, everyone gets worried. It's a normal, healthy human emotion. But an anxiety disorder, that's a whole different ballgame. It's when that worry becomes excessive, when you can't control it, and when it really starts to get in the way of you just living your life. It's worry that's taken the driver's seat. Anxiety is a bit of a time traveler. It always lives in the future, totally obsessed with the what-ifs. But it's also incredibly physical. Your heart might pound, you might break out in a sweat. That's your body's fight or flight system going into overdrive. So to cope, people often start to avoid any person, place, or thing that might set off those feelings. And here's the really cruel trick anxiety plays on you. That worry about exams gets so huge that it actually makes it impossible to study. It paralyzes you. It steals your focus, robs you of sleep, until you're on the verge of a panic attack right before you walk into the exam hall. All right, let's move on to our final condition for today. And this is one that gets trivialized and misunderstood a lot: obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. And let me tell you, it is so much more than just liking things neat and tidy. The name itself tells you the whole story. It's a two-part problem. First, you have the obsessions. These are intrusive, unwanted thoughts or images that pop into your head and cause a ton of distress. Then, to try and get rid of that distress, you have the compulsions. These are the repetitive behaviors that someone feels like they absolutely have to perform. You can see the vicious cycle at the heart of OCD here. The obsession, this nagging, persistent thought that your hands are covered in germs, creates this massive wave of anxiety. The compulsion, washing them over and over, is a desperate attempt to make that anxiety go away, even if it's just for a few minutes. So in this classic example, the intense fear of germs is the obsession. The hours and hours they spend cleaning is the compulsion. But here's the key. It's not actually about being clean. It's about trying to silence that screaming, anxious voice in their head that the obsession created. Phew, okay, we've looked at 4 very distinct conditions. Now it's time for the aha moment. We're going to zoom out and put everything on one slide so you can see the core differences at a single glance. This is where it all clicks. Just look at this all laid out together. It makes the unique fingerprint of each condition so clear, doesn't it? See how ADHD is all about action, or a lack of focus on it, while depression is centered on mood and interest. Anxiety is all about future worry and what your body feels, while OCD is that very specific cycle of thoughts and behaviors. So, after all this, what's the bottom line? What should you take away from this? Well, the most important message is actually one of hope, a really big one. All of these conditions are common, yes, but more importantly, they are treatable. There are so many ways to get support. Therapy, lifestyle changes, medication, all designed to help people live full, healthy, productive lives. We've covered a lot, and I really hope this has brought some clarity for you, because understanding is always, always the first and most powerful step we can take. It builds compassion for ourselves and for the people around us. So the question this really leaves us with is, now that we understand, what's the next step we can take with that knowledge?